The role of the media and of the press is not to entertain us, it is to empower us, right? Today, they only entertain us, to distract us, but they're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to focus our attention to empower us to observe and supervise how government is being conducted. And if something doesn't work or there's misconduct, they're supposed to inform the public. So the public can now, through democratic means, take the consequences and basically elect other representatives or whatever, or the judiciary can, based on this information, initiate investigations and so on. So the media has a crucial role in society. That's why they're called the fourth estate. The mainstream media has increasingly kind of dropped this hot potato and turned to just entertain people and make money with people, and advertisements and these types of things. But they're no longer actually empowering the people as they're supposed to do in democracy. So now, because they left this gap, you have a kind of a rogue actor coming in, like WikiLeaks, and saying, okay, hold on, we'll inform you, and we'll establish a platform where whistleblowers, which means employees of governments or of companies that observe misconduct and that report that misconduct internally, but that those companies and the governments, they're not taking care of that, they're not doing anything about it, then they can actually submit this information anonymously to WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks will publish it and thereby empower the public again to have that information and to take the measures that are necessary to correct that. So that's really the role that they have. They're somehow like, I always say, whistleblowers, which are the people that supply WikiLeaks with information. They're the alarm system of a democratic society.
Hi, everyone. So we are here for the 12th candidates for Assange. I'm without my co-host, Matt Ho, tonight, but we've got some great candidates. And that was Nils Melzer at the Open there. And Nils Melzer is the former UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, who has written this book. Oh, great. And we have our other one of our other candidates just showed up. So we've got some great people here, and we also have Alex Hills all the way from New Zealand. Candles for Assange on Twitter. If you've been at all involved in this movement, you know who she is. So she's going to jump on here in just a minute and talk about whatever you want to talk about what you've seen recently, what's coming up. But I wanted to just start out by showing these are the representatives, the current representatives who signed this letter hold on one second. Yeah. Signed this letter in November of last year. This is a McGovern letter, Representative McGovern, who's a Democrat in Massachusetts. And it was a really, it's telling Joe Biden to drop the charges against Assange. And, we have some good bipartisan support here. So one of the things that's just really frustrating going through and reaching out to current candidates is I feel that everyone sees this as a fringe issue. And I mean, I understand that it's generally not on people's minds. And as you're campaigning, it's not what people are talking about. And I want to hear what you guys have, if you have any ideas of how to break through that, because we know this is about the First Amendment. It's about freedom of speech. And it affects all of us, but it's just not on everyone's radar. And I think, I don't know, I was hoping it might help if everyone saw these are the representatives. And I mean, I have heard some people say, well, oh, these are the fringe, some of the fringe in both of the duopoly parties. But regardless, they supported this. And let's see, also I wanted to show, but then we get to the House Resolution 934. If you're a candidate and you initially got a message from me, I said, hey, do you support this? And this is the, this was from, I think it was December of last year. So just after the letter, December, January. Most of those same people signed the resolution. But as you see, we have some missing. So I know that Paula Iacella, who's with Assange Defense Boston, has been working really hard, like calling constantly to their offices, especially the ones that are signed the letter but didn't sign House Resolution 934. So we've got Ayanna Pressley, Pramila Jayapal, Matthew Rosendale, Greg Caesar, Jamal Bowman, Chuy Garcia, AOC, and Rand Paul. So if you want to get involved in this, please call and tell them, hey, if you don't vote, you don't sign on to this, we have other options. There are other people running for office. And so with that, I will bring, Alex.
If I could just jump in just to point
no, go right ahead. This is
Rand
for
Paul
you guys, so
no. Rand Paul is a senator though, so it's kind of not, he wouldn't be signing the House resolution.
You're right. Sorry, that's true. He is the one senator. On the rest are House members. You're right. But I think he's been vocal in the past, but he could still do more, I think, to sort of talk about it. So thank you for pointing that out, though. Okay, so Alex, all the way from New Zealand.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great to see you. It's been a long time. I met Alex on Randy Credico's show, Assange Countdown to Freedom. And if you want to know more about the case, you could go to his YouTube and watch those. But so do you want to tell us just what's going on now, where you were in London recently, right?
Yeah, it was wonderful. I've been to one London action a year ago in Piccadilly, and I played my violin there, and it was wonderful. But this time I managed to turn up for the Australia House show action that was on the 10th of April. And so it was just the day before the 5-year anniversary. And we had a really big crowd at Australia House in the Strand in London. We had Christian Hafrenson come down, the editor-in-chief, and we had the WikiLeaks ambassador come down. And yeah, it was quite an amazing day. We did, I did a bit of violin. WikiLeaks did a sort of a cut from the whole show, from the whole action, and actually put it up on Twitter. So it was quite impressive. 100,000 people saw the video because they tweeted it. And then we were in the pub afterwards, and I was meeting, some of my fellow Kiwis who've been turning up to the London protest, but also just all the people that I know really well, mostly from the screen, from seeing them do all these weekly actions in London for absolutely years. And we were at the pub, and as we were there, but we got the news from Biden that, he had that throwaway comment, if you like, but it was a wonderful atmosphere. You can imagine like half the pub was Assange activists, and it just erupted. And I mean, even though it was just a throwaway comment, it was very exciting to be there with all those special people, because to me, they're, heroes, the grassroots activists that have been keeping it going on the streets all these years. Right. I think of them so highly. I mean, a little background on me, because we're in New Zealand, and I was involved in Unity 4J and various global actions, trying to help by creating graphics and trying to get them solidarity actions going around the world, because I sense that there was a lot of grassroots supporters sort of divided and separated all around the world. And if we could bring them together in one place and show that there were all these solidarity actions going on, even as the London actions or the American actions were going on, all as a support, even though, might only get a few people in each place. But, just that idea that, you've got 20 or 60 cities protesting at the same time. And the reason New Zealand got involved in listing them is because we see the sun first. So, often we were trying to get the social media posts out there as quick as possible to sort of set a precedent and get it rolling around the world, because we were so many hours ahead of everyone. So that's how I ended up listing protests. And yeah, it was an honor to go down. I managed to make it to 2 Australia House protests while I was there. I would have loved to have done more, but I was seeing family. All my family are from London, so
you're so right about the power in numbers. I think that's really what my idea was with doing this. I actually hosted a Candidates for Assange group 5 years ago, right after he was dragged out of the embassy. And they're small candidates, but in number, together it's a powerful force. I think. I believe we just lost one. We lost Salim. Hopefully he can come back. But
I mean, you were asking before about how we raise urgency on this, and
yes.
I've been wondering the same because I've been involved in the freedom activist side in New Zealand as well as the Assange activist side. And you're sort of aware of this chipping off of support of Assange over the years. I mean, I've been doing this since 2018, but there are many of my fellow grassroots supporters that have been doing it since 2010. It's incredible. But what you noticed is this, this divide and conquer tactic where you find yourself divided amongst other Assange supporters, whether it's COVID or freedom or, the conflict in Palestine, Israel or Ukraine. And so each time, Hillary getting losing the election, you see a sort of a chip off of the support for Assange over the years because of the psychological operations that were going on in the media. And so they very successfully sort of hit at each sort of side of support, whether it is, you got Trump elected or, all the sort of nonsense claims that are made. And each one of them sort of, feminism and, national security. And so, you get the sense that the support has been sort of shaved off each time. And what we need to do, I believe, is bring it together on the freedom of speech, freedom of publications kind of issue, because right now, that's the thing that we have in common, whether you're an activist supporting Palestine or if you're someone supporting the free press, Assange, anti-war, freedom, loss of sovereignty, all these areas, these people could be brought back together again. And I think that's why they needed to silence Julian, because he had such a powerful voice, not just for one side of politics, but for all sides of politics and those who are anarchic and all sorts of realms of people were listening to Julian. And I think that's what made him such a danger. And I think we need to bring it back and show what we have in common with all those, side issues that have been, skelfed off over the years. And we have to bring them back together. I think that's the biggest hope we have, to try and raise awareness.
But I think that, in some ways it's changing. There's definitely more awareness and more people, seems like more people in the streets outside
Absolutely.
of the courthouse and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, when we have billboards up now over the motorway in New Zealand, we get so many more beeps than we used to, and support as people going past, people stopping and asking and actually wanting information as opposed to having to shove it in their face,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very different, very different. So it definitely has improved, but I think what needs to happen is the sort of joining up of the anti-war, the freedom and the free press and the Assange movements, get them back together again, because we all have so much in common if we only know, if we only knew.
Right. Well, here in the U.S., though, as you guys know, we'll bring the candidates in now. Everyone is so divided, and we have the corporate media that's, its own thing. And then we've even got independent media that's kind of, people now pick and choose exactly what they want to listen to. And you might not get other viewpoints. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and I'm going to hope that maybe Salim will come back. But please go right ahead. Andrew, you want to start?
Yeah, age before beauty, I guess. So, I'm Andy Horning. I wrote a book on the Constitution. It's called Relighting the Torch. And a lot of what I'm all about has always been about the Constitution in a way. But the common enemy for all of us right now is it's not any kind of law. It's not the First Amendment. A lot of nations don't have a First Amendment. Anything like a First Amendment. And, of course, Assange is being threatened with the Espionage Act of 1917 here, which is totally inappropriate and all of that. And I don't think a lot of this has nothing to do with law. It really has much more to do with what Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address of 1960, when he was talking about the military-industrial complex, which everybody knew about. I mean, we've heard that phrase over and over again, although we apparently don't really pay attention to what it means and what we should do about it. But in that same speech, just like a paragraph away, he talked about the scientific and technological elite, which at that time they didn't have. The CIA had not yet invented Google and Facebook and all of this stuff. We didn't have the Trusted News Initiative, but we did have spies. We had the FBI, and the CIA was kind of was the OSS that turned into the CIA. And it was becoming obvious that there were powers behind the powers, and that if you listen to what Truman said about the FBI, and about how J. Edgar Hoover would give his right eye to be in charge of everything, and all of the congressmen were afraid of him. It's been a long time since that we really should have been worrying about the people behind the curtain who really always have been manipulating the news. We've heard in this country about the CIA's Operation Mockingbird, where they literally paid journalists to lie, to deceive Americans about what was going on in the Vietnam War and so on. And that never really stopped. And the fact that our CIA and FBI and other agencies now, like we have international organizations, the INGOs, NGOs, like the World Economic Forum, that are immensely powerful. And they have gotten consortiums of corporate powers to toe the line, such that we have this Trusted News Initiative now, where pretty much all the media in the world, the big powers like Disney and all of the corporate media, now are speaking the same words, not just the same story, but they're actually parroting the same lines. And a good part of what their stated objective is, this Trusted News Initiative, is to suppress what they deem untrue. And in fact, just the fact that we've been treated to 3 new words to our lexicon. You got malinformation, misinformation. Well, mis, dis, and malinformation was actually a name of an agency even. But malinformation is information that's true, but is not favorable to the powers that be. And you think about what this really means, given the context of a long-standing puppet government, shadow government that's really been pulling the strings on our congressmen for a long time. Then we really should have always been looking at campaign donations. We really should have always been looking at, what Raytheon and Boeing and all of these people have to do with what we're now, what really did Assange do to these people? And you look to, imagine from their perspective, somebody like Assange is enemy number one. If somebody is out there telling the truth, and literally kind of pulling the curtain away from the powers that that are really running this puppet show, if we start to see the puppet strings and we stop re-electing all of these people, which I don't know how it is in New Zealand, but here in the last few elections, our U.S. House has had an over 98% re-election rate. Even if our approval rates sink into the single digits, the re-election rate is embarrassing. And the fact that we really have, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. We really have nobody else to blame but ourselves for the fact that, nobody really likes this two-party system thing, which is inherently divisive. It's unconstitutional. Our founders warned us against parties in general, but they specifically warned us against having only 2 factions. And you look at a bell curve and you see how bad that works when we have to have mob rule to win. That's an awful thing. And it's just I don't know what everybody thinks about democracy and so on. Everybody has weird ideas about how such things are defined. But the fact is, right now, in politics, there is no problem with being wrong, and there's no advantage to being right in electoral politics. And because of that, we've got terrible politicians. Here in the United States, our 2 presidential candidates who seem to be leading are among the most awful people that have ever been, on any stage anywhere, let alone presidential politics. And so, we've got an awful setup right now. And really, we should have seen it coming. We should have done something about it before this. And when we had whistleblowers, not just like, Assange, but even before that, like William Binney and others who, for a long time, have been trying to warn us about, what our government's doing, spying and lying and blocking information from us, which, a lot of people talked about Google. And I kind of hesitate to say this. My daughter is an engineer for Google, and, they pay really well. And therein kind of lies the rub with politicians and the rest of us. We get either the carrot or the stick. If we toe the line, if we behave, we get paid very well. We can get tasty positions on legislative committees. If we don't behave, we get smeared. They can make up things like a Steele dossier, or they can, these days with AI, who knows what they can come up with against anybody. So the fact is, we've got an awful mess that we should be voting away, and we haven't been doing that. And kind of the chickens have come home to roost upon Julian Assange, unfortunately.
Right. Well, you guys are both in the Midwest, and Salim, who dropped off, he's in Michigan. I wonder, if you have similarities, and when you're talking to people, people's concerns. I'm assuming when you're out campaigning, people aren't coming up to you and telling you all about how they're worried about Assange being in prison. Do you hear, Michael? Do you want to jump in? You're much younger than us. So.
Much younger. You didn't have to say that.
Well, we've had some Jose Vega, who I know you know, and have done some work with. Michael, he was on, and Chibu Asanye, who's in Illinois 13th or 14th Green Party candidate, was on, and I'm always interested to hear what the younger people have to say, because I feel like from what I'm seeing, they are a lot more aware. They know what's going on. Would you say?
Yeah, they are. Oh, they are. They know they're hip to it. There's whenever they hear or they understand, if they know about it, then they're hip to it. And, they've been getting lied to their entire lives.
That's what Jose said. Yep.
Yeah.
So. All of us have. Mm-hmm.
So, Michael, running as an independent, how did that come about? Do you want to just introduce yourself? And
Sure. My name is Michael Harbaugh. I'm running as an independent candidate here in the Ohio 10th District here, running against the head of the Intelligence Committee, Mike Turner. So he would know a thing or two about Julian Assange, and he is no friend of Julian Assange.
Oh, boy.
He is a deep state guy, doing the bidding of the military-industrial complex. If you're familiar with him, he's on all the cable news, and he is just the go-to man, and speaks out of both sides of his mouth. And he's just the biggest creature when it comes to big government surveillance. So whether it's FISA warrants, or whether it's selling your data recently to the government or to police, private citizens' data, the big data collection. Also, he's been on the side of everything. Patriot Act. I'm sure he's on the side of going after Julian Assange. I don't have any direct quotes off the top of my head, but I'm sure he is 100% for, the deep state, like, staying in power. So he's no friend of, the common man. And Julian Assange has been, tearing the lid off of all of their lies, until they, shut him down. And so
people in your district, how do you get this subject going? How do you talk about it and make people understand why it's so important?
Usually it's when people start talking about about the corruption and stuff like that, in the government, and they understand these wars are lies, and then Julian Assange, so it's usually people that are already kind of hip to this, but as far as just people that are normal every day, they're not too into it. But when they hear about it, they're like, yeah, just another thing in the long, long list of we're getting screwed over by these establishment politicians and two political parties. They understand. They come together to squash the working class, and hurt people. So it's, it's not an issue like on the forefront. It's on my website, but it's not like an issue that, as you all know, that's on the forefront of, people are worried about how to put food on their table.
Right. Yeah, it seems like by design, because if the whole population is just struggling to make it paycheck to paycheck, they don't have time.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
In New Zealand, we don't even have a single MP supporting Assange, not one. we are so in bed with the World Economic Forum and the military complex in America and England. It's just impossible here. I don't know if you heard in the last 4 years, you know, we had Jacinda's Ministry of Truth, you know, that we will be your one true source of information. And just almost to prove a point that it's really just two cheeks of the same arse that we're dealing with in the two major parties. But I think that's George Galloway's phrase. But to just almost to prove it, both Jacinda Ardern and Luxon are major globalists who went to training school in the WEF and did their Young Leaders program. And Luxon, who is in the other party, you know, I'd say it's more the conservative version, not like the Democrats, whereas Jacinda was more like the Democrat sort of side. Luxon has now brought on Jacinda to be the new Ministry of Truth. Like, it's just insane. So we have a situation in the moment in New Zealand where we've had some major whistleblowers from the police and from the Ministry of Health. And that information has been banned outright. You know, we're close to having X shut down, you know, at least certain accounts on X, any way that they can through BlackRock or however they manage their censorship, we don't know. But, you know, they're looking to shut down all discussion of the data, which was showing some horrific health results here. And the journalist who published the information has been threatened so badly legally with jail time and her equipment being taken away from her. She's a former, you know, mainstream journalist, and now she's come over to the side of anti-war and free press and you know, freedom in general. And she has been threatened so badly she had to take down the data. And now we have another brave company, that was Liz Gunn, and now we have another brave company, Counterspin, who have reposted the data, and they're taking serious risks. They're already facing court for their journalism. So, yeah, unfortunately in New Zealand, we not only have two fake parties and the Greens, which are not any better, but also we have, you know, a complete shutting down of journalism. But at the same time, we've lost about 5 mainstream media companies in the last 3 months. So, you know, clearly people are voting with their where they're choosing to get their information. A lot of people are just going, oh, I'm not going to watch the news at all. But the ones that are continuing to watch the news are clearly voting with their feet. And I think that's almost more powerful. And the one thing I'd say about all this, you know, having fake parties everywhere, it's great that you're running for independent, Michael. I'm glad you're an independent candidate, right?
I forgot to mention that I'm running as a libertarian. Yeah.
Oh, you're libertarian. Great. Well, at least it's not one of the main parties, you know. We'd love to have something similar here, but we have nothing like that, unfortunately. And what I think is really the root cause of the problem is that we didn't prosecute the war criminals that were exposed with the data, or the, you know, the criminals or the corrupt in general. We never took any of them to task, and that's where we fell down. I mean, not just not supporting Julian enough, but you know, we didn't actually do anything about the people that are still in power dictating what we do today. this is major.
Same thing here. And that's where I'm running for US Senate in Indiana. And you know, I've sent out several press releases, of course. I mean, I do that very regularly. And I wouldn't have expected the one that I wrote on Julian Assange to get printed, because that's, you know, that's the nature of it. You know, I'm sending it to mostly, you know, the conventional media. But the good news is that conventional media is dying. And a lot of their money comes from like Pfizer and the military industrial complex. And so they're being supported, you know, by the bad guys. And I think a lot of people know it because alternative media is starting to replace them. And some of the voices that are coming out of Twitter and Rumble and other places where free speech is not yet completely eliminated are telling the truth. The problem, of course, is that now the alternative media themselves are under attack. And the people who own the alternative media are starting to feel pressure to, oh, we're not going to go into this country, or we have to get out of that country. And it's the fight is on. But I see good news in this. One of the things that's always bothered me. In it's kind of a frustrating thing. I want people to be comfortable. I want people to be happy. But when people are too happy, they're not going to change. And if you read our Declaration of Independence, which people used to think was a precious thing, it ought to be. One of I think the most actionable words in it are when it was written that, mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by opposing the forms to which they are accustomed. In other words, our founders had to get shot at before they were willing to fight. And we're now in this country starting to hurt economically. Our kids are, getting messed up in school. We have all kinds of problems here that now people can't avoid any longer. And the difference between rich and poor is really getting ridiculous, and not in any kind of a, economic sense. It's all by fraud of the Federal Reserve System and so on. Something called the Cantillon effect, which I need to do a podcast on that by itself. But, the fact that the whole world now is running on fiat currency and pushing towards CBDCs, which are highly controllable. You see what happened with COVID, which is all about control and getting people to be obedient. And, it's the same actors behind all of this. We've got a few Malthusian eugenicist psychopaths running the world right now. And there's nothing good about that. And there's an awful lot that's bad that we can now see. And so I think it's kind of, it's a shame that it's had to come to this point, but I think it was inevitable that we had to be hurting before we were willing to do anything. And so I'm hoping that voters everywhere around the planet are going to, realize that the whole point of elections is not to hire politicians, it's to fire them. And that we really use that power of peaceful revolution as it was intended to, seek new guards for our future security, as it says also in the Declaration of Independence. I mean, our nation's founders had to fight. They had to shoot the global superpower, which was their own government, to start the United States of America. And they bequeathed us elections so that we would not have to shoot anybody. We could just go and just vote things away. And I'm hoping that we can, control the fraud that, which it's always been with us, and control ourselves, which, if we would just vote the way we talk, things would already be better. But that's where it's got to start, because one way or another, all revolutions start in the mind. And if we are properly aligned in our heads, we're going to vote differently than we have been. And if we're not properly aligned in our minds, then there is no hope. So we really have to be on the forefront of educating people to not only their power and accountability in the voting booth, but really what's at stake and who's in charge right now. Because I think a lot of people understand our government's corrupt. All governments around the planet are corrupt. It's kind of inherent that, the bigger the government, the more corrupt it is. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if we could just get people to understand that, your vote is not supposed to be this tribal thing where you've got, a red painted face or a blue painted face, and, you have to oppose the other guy no matter what. The whole point is supposed to be that they're not even the ones in charge. The Democrats and Republicans are doing the same thing when it comes to Assange, when it comes to war, when it comes to almost all the bad stuff. They vote the same way. Mm-hmm. And in my state, we did not have one federal representative who's voted correctly on any of the big bills that were related to, war, loss of privacy, increased power for government, all of that stuff. So,
but how do you break? We've talked about this several times on this broadcast. Phil Anderson, who's running for Senate Libertarian in Wisconsin, we've talked about it a lot. Where you can't break through this mindset that people have that somehow they're throwing away their vote by voting for you or you. So do you hear people say, I want to vote for you, but I need to, or do you think that's changed? Is that changing at all, Michael? Do younger people, I'm just curious.
Younger people don't give a shit. It's the people over 40 and 50 that are entrenched in their ways, but you hear that a lot. Mm-hmm. They don't want to throw away their vote. They don't want to risk it. Mm-hmm. Too much of a threat of the fascists taking over, or just and you're going to have that. People are just in their own camps.
That argument right there just really blows me away, because the whole, you be scared of Trump because he's fascist. Yet, I mean, you can look at the budget for military and police spending that Biden brought in, and look at what's going on the campuses right now. I mean,
Oh my. It's not, there isn't anybody who's not, I mean, if you listen to how Mussolini defined fascism,
that's correct.
We are a fascist nation, and it's frustrating that the corporatism and the crony capitalism that's going on. I'm a free market guy all the way around. I'm unabashedly free market, but we have nothing like that, and we haven't for a long time in this country. So, when people are bashing the free market, or bashing businesses, they don't really know what they're talking about. I mean, it's frustrating that people are blaming, even rich guys. There are a lot of rich guys that are not part of the problem. We really should be looking at, who's got political power and what are they doing with it. And you've got good examples like Microsoft that was about to get busted up. And I don't know if Michael, you're probably too young to remember this, you young guys, but Microsoft was about to get busted up until they decided, oh shoot, we better get some lobbyists, and they invested heavily in lobbyists. And once you start playing the game, now you're on top of the world. And now Bill Gates is now buying up farmland and deciding what we can eat and what we can't eat, and spraying chemicals into the sky to block out the sun. And so you look to see what political connections can do to anybody.
So how will you guys be different if you're elected? How do you fight? I mean,
I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think the correct way to look at it is this is all about voters, and it always has been. And if I got elected, it wouldn't be because I was a special guy and that, then I'm young and handsome, like Michael Harbaugh, of course. But if I get elected, what that means is that voters had a change of heart and mind. That voters decided they were sick of the two-party system, and voters actually used their votes as weapons of peaceful revolution, and they did something about it. That's the power. It's not me. So it's, we're, Michael, you and I are putting ourselves out there as options. And, we are ready to take the reins when people are ready to give them to us. But we can't grab them. I don't have the money to even grab them by the collar the way, billboards and yard signs, and I do have yard signs. I guess I have one right up. How do I do that? Right there.
No, you're right.
So, we can do what we can do, but the arguments that I'm going to be hearing all through this is that this election is the most important one of our lifetime. And that while, yes, Andy, you're the best candidate, and I agree with everything you have to say, and gosh, I wish I could vote for you, we can't let the Democrats win, or we can't let the Republicans win. And, the best argument I would have is that if you want a good Democrat or a good Republican to win this seat, you have to vote for me, because the other guys are in the bag already. And they've already demonstrated that whatever it is that you want out of these politicians, you're not going to get it. And so if I get the chance, I'll be in debates. If there are going to be debates, I'll be in them. At the state level, there are probably going to be only two. We'll have public forums, and I'm going to go to all of those. I'm going to be doing parades. I'm retired now, so I can, I'm spending more time doing this than I have in past campaigns. But that's not what's going to win this. What's going to win it is when people are feeling pain. And, that's what makes people motivated to change. And before that, they're, like I said, mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. Things are getting insufferable and too hard to ignore anymore. And that's really what's got to change. So it's not me. It's not going to be anything I can do. It's got to be voters who make up their mind to take the reins and run the country. They've got to be the ones to govern their government.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that the young people especially are feeling the pain right now, because, I mean, it's impossible to make ends meet, on your own right now. I think, rents and everything is up so high. Wouldn't you say isn't that what you hear, Michael?
Well, yeah, absolutely. The cost of living is absolutely through the roof. So, yeah, most people are just trying to get by, and they don't pay attention to politics. They don't. They tune in at maybe at the end a little bit. The people that are paying attention, they see the writing on the wall, but a lot of them are still locked in. They still have hope. They're still stuck in the choice. And just, I don't know, me personally, in the younger generation, we're a little bit more likely to just say, whatever happens, happens. And, we're ready to fight. Me personally, I'm ready to fight. If Trump gets in and commits a genocide in some other country, oh wait, that's Biden. Biden did that when Trump was supposed to. And either way, I'm ready to fight whoever it is. I'm fighting Joe Biden. If Trump gets in and kills an Iranian general, and then we're storming the beaches there in Iran, I'll be out in the street then too. And
there's I've got this clip I should play here. I made just part of it actually. I don't know if you guys saw this Romney and Blinken talk. I think it was something. It's short, I promise, but it explains a lot.
I mean, typically the Israelis are good at PR. What's happened here? How have they and we been so ineffective at communicating the realities there? And
we're on an intravenous feed of information with new impulses, inputs every millisecond. And of course, the way this is played out on social media has dominated the narrative. And you have a social media ecosystem environment in which context, history, facts get lost, and the emotion, the impact of images dominates. And we can't discount that. But I think it also has a very, very, very challenging effect on the narrative.
Yeah, a small parenthetical point, which is some wonder why there was such overwhelming support for us to shut down potentially TikTok or other entities of that nature. If you look at the postings on TikTok and the number of mentions of Palestinians relative to other social media sites, it's overwhelmingly so among TikTok broadcasts. So I'd note that's of real interest, and the president will get the chance to make action in that regard.
Make action in that regard. Had you seen that?
Oh yeah, I saw it.
I mean, without even getting into that that issue, Israel Palestine, we can just focus on what they said there was that we don't have control of the narrative. That was the main. I mean, they don't like the fact that people were getting information that wasn't crafted the way they wanted it. And
it's not really the first time, though. I mean, the same thing happened during the Vietnam War. A lot of people said that was the first time when people actually got to see the ugliness of war on their TV screens. And that's when we actually had people in the streets protesting because they could see, the burning children and the dead bodies and all of that stuff that we really brushed over in World War II. And, there were a lot of horrible things that happened in World War I, World War II. And, Americans were actually burned out by war during World War II and during World War I and didn't want to do World War II. And yet it's still the case that if you control the present, you can control the past. There's an old Russian proverb, it's kind of a funny thing. The future is known. It's the past that keeps changing. And if you're in charge, you can rewrite, what people believe about a lot of things. And you can be told that this is an existential threat to us, that, what happens to Israel or what happens to Ukraine means that, you will not have food if we don't win here. And we believe it. We tend to believe it because we generally, most of us, it's hard to imagine how people can be so evil as to lie to us on such a big scale about things of such great importance. And that's where, coming back to Assange, that's where, he was immensely powerful in pointing out, oh, holy cow, this stuff has been under our nose all this time. And, when you've got this kind of information coming through the various channels, whether it's, Binney or Assange or any of the other, we've had innumerable whistleblowers. General Smedley Butler 70 years ago. We've had all kinds of people warning us about this stuff happening. It's just that right now we have a kind of a interesting convergence of new media, which is kind of overwhelming the old media that was very well controlled. And now we're able to see things we were not able to see before. I've worked my whole life in technology. I know that, that there are big problems with over-reliance on it, but this is one of those cases where if we did not have alternative media, if we didn't have something like this forum we're in right now, how would this information get out at all? And you look to see how easy it actually is for governments to in one way or another intimidate, buy off, or shoot people. And it's been, it's kind of been the case a long time where Democrats tended to be, they tended to blame the people who bought government. Republicans would be the ones who more tended, to blame the people who are selling government. But the fact is, our government has always been sold, and the people who buy it are almost irrelevant, except that the fact that now it's pretty much all the same thing. The people buying and selling government are government. The politicians we see on the ballot are hardly even relevant. Lawmakers don't write laws as much as, unelected bureaucrats and executive agencies do. And so the fact that none of our legal forms are actually enacted right now, nothing in the Constitution is being done. We are going pre-Hammurabi with our form of government, and that it's basically they are in charge and we are not. And they've got control of the keys of our media, our children's minds in our schools, our entertainment systems. They've got it all.
Well, right now they're worried TikTok has that, which it does.
Yeah.
So what, I am surprised that this is still even allowed. I mean, at what point do they take this away? Or I guess they figure that, we're still talking in our little silos and it won't really make a difference. I don't know.
What our republic, our GOP used to be constitutionalists. They used to talk a little bit about the Constitution anyway, never really did it. But what everybody just signed on to was actually giving the president authority to shut down not just, TikTok or whatever, but individual websites. Mm-hmm. So this is like complete control over, they've already been spying on everything we do through our cell phones and email and all of that stuff. But the fact that they can actually, by presidential authority, just shut down anything on the internet, anything. That's all. They just signed that into law, where it's really the forms of oppression are already in place. One of the things that it was a big, powerful image for me was with the Boston Marathon bombing. I don't know if you guys remember how fast it was that the streets were filled with these black-clad troopers, like stormtroopers, and military vehicles in downtown Boston. Like, people didn't know these things were already there. Mm-hmm. It was like there was an army that just appeared out of nowhere in the middle of Boston. And that's everywhere across the country.
Yeah, that is terrifying. I mean,
it should be terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, have you been, do you know students that have been involved in these protests? Or, is that what you hear a lot about? And what is their, what are their thoughts about that? The militarization of the police?
Well, they're against it. Yeah. I know some people that went to here in Ohio State, in Columbus. There was some pretty hardcore action taken there, and the police were coming in there pretty heavy-handed, just, beating up some college kids and, interrupting Muslim people like during prayer and because they've got to pray like 3 or 5 times a day and, messing with them when they're doing their prayer there in like the public area. I know some activists down here in Cincinnati.
That's right. So 10th district is where? In
Dayton, Ohio. It's west.
Okay.
It's west, southwest Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
I also know some activists in Cincinnati that have had some pretty heavy-handed police presence just for a rally across from a city commissioners meeting. And, they weren't being belligerent or nothing, but they said it was a very heavy police response with riot gear, tactical, a truck, just this heavy stuff. I even know some, and then they even did it here in Dayton when Jerry Seinfeld came through here with his act. And, I know the person. She started circulating a flyer online to some of these anti-war Palestine activists.
Oh, uh-huh.
And, about I don't know, I think they said 15 or 20 people showed up, but she said when it was in the beginning, it was just her and a 70-year-old peace activist, 75-year-old peace activist. And she said across the street was a whole tactical unit, 20 guys in gear, just because something was circulated online, protesting, Jerry Seinfeld and his views. But they came out, she said they very quickly packed up and realized, oh my gosh, but they were called out there. And
Do you hear, I'm sure you know about Kent State then, and we've had, I've gotten to know Laurel Krauss, who might be watching now. She was also a guest on Randy's show that I worked on. That's how I met her, but it was her sister that was killed. One of the 4 students shot and killed May 4th, 1970. And the more you dig into that story, it's
awful. It is awful.
It is. Yeah. So do you, is there a sense then, do you think, among younger people that this is history repeating, that this isn't new?
I think it was good timing, for that to kind of, tap these kids into something, real, which was the war protests, I feel, in the 70s and the 60s, which really galvanized a whole generation. And real stuff was on the line. Real stakes were at play. A little bit less for the American public, I would say, now, because we're not actively ourselves fighting. But it is the solidarity. But then, just the harshness, the crackdown of the government, all these weapons that I think it started under George Bush, and then Obama, put a big, pedal to the metal on all this military hardware coming back from Iraq, coming back from Afghanistan. Well, let's repurpose it. Let's sell it to local municipalities all the way around the country, and little towns of 500 people have an MRAT, that got sold to them, or, all this stuff. So,
well, I think what's equally terrifying, though, is as I watched, different places around Colombia, as the police were taking people away, they're being arrested. And then you've got bail or whatever. Then, and I think there was it Alan? Yes, Alan Dershowitz just said something about lawfare. That's what we're going to throw at you next. So then all these students are dealing with that battle. And we know from the Assange case, how, power will use the law. And so what do we do?
It's very, very heavy-handed. I must say, in my opinion, in a free society, democratic society, we are not authoritarian. We that's what I thought our country was founded upon. The right of peaceful protest. I was very happy with how the Canadian government, handled that trucker convoy protest. I thought that was versus what you see here, what going on campuses, people getting their heads cracked, versus, some of the peaceful protests during Black Lives Matter that weren't the violent ones, but were met with very heavy-handed, police oppression. A lot of people say that January 6th, people,
Canada shut down bank accounts.
That's what I was going to say.
They ran over protesters with horses.
And people got
they absolutely were not. No, they were not peaceful. They were just not reported in the mainstream media. And in New Zealand, in New Zealand, we had a 23-day peaceful protest. It was like a parallel society being built at the parliament. We had toilets plumbed into the street mains. We had showers. We had, massage, haircuts, music, schools, churches. There was the entire village. It was called Freedom Village.
Wow.
And in the end, there were co-opters sent in. They were clearly not from that protest. You could tell on the last 2 days. And then they literally burnt it down and, pushed everyone out of there in force, arrested a load of people, punched people. I got sexually assaulted by a policeman just for holding up a sign. Like, honestly, Canada and New Zealand, I just have to tell you, Australia are disgusting with protests. I don't know if they'd have the same implications that America has, where you're actually holding people in jail like January 6th and that sort of stuff. That hasn't happened so much because they've not had as much luck in the courts pushing whatever fines or arrests. They haven't had as much luck as they have had in America. But the actions against protesters in Canada are just shocking, and New Zealand and Australia. Like, we are third world. Honestly, you wouldn't believe how it's changed.
I was just going to say, as far as the trucker convoy went, it seems like they let them set up and hang out for a while. And then, whereas I'm just saying, like here in Columbus, Ohio, like I remember the Black Lives Matter protests. I mean, these were, I know people that were there, and there was footage circulating online of like, just the overhanded heavy stuff, when police are coming up and pepper grassing or pepper spraying a medic that is away from the action, just tending to somebody, and then they're targeting medical people, that are just helping people. And
we had police pepper spray themselves in their eyes. And then they claimed to the media that the protesters threw acid in their face. And that story ran in New Zealand. Like, there was so much hatred towards protesters. I mean, even from people that should know better, like Nikki Hager, like some people who should really know better have been absolutely atrocious in this. And it seems like, well, we had a massive fund being paid, a COVID journalism fund, 150 million for a country this size, and tiny media companies. You can imagine how far that went. So, there was an awful lot of money being spent on a narrative, and obviously anything to support.
Now we know, like with January 6th, how many FBI people were actually in there that were causing a lot of the agitation. Right. And that's, you think about what kind of power there was for our government to tell police to stand down, not only on January 6th, but also, let cities burn, like Indianapolis and other places. They were just ravaged by the BLM Antifa protests, and nobody went to jail for that. And so you can see that you mentioned the word lawfare. That's been going on for a long time, also. Where courts are used in a very partisan fashion. If the Democrats are in charge, they win. If the Republicans are in charge, they win. But really, the people who have won the major battles in courts and in education and entertainment, and it's really the Democrats who are really running everything right now, even though both parties are owned by essentially the same people. You got people talk about George Soros, but he gives to Republicans too, because he doesn't care who wins. He just wants to know whoever wins will pick up the phone when he calls, and they'll march to his orders. And that's how all of this has been working. And that's where voters just have to get sick of this and change it.
Yeah, and voters have to just start believing that, there can be a third party or an independent candidate to win. I mean, I think it's the numbers are there, and I was looking for my graphic. I couldn't find it right now, but there's it's a little cartoon, and it says something about voting not matter, and all the people that didn't vote. And you can see, because in 2020, 80 million people didn't vote. So, but the cartoon shows, it didn't matter. But if all those people had just voted, it would have.
Well, I got to give you some good news, though. It got kind of a bad angle to it. There, in the last election, just the last election here in Indiana, 12 libertarians got elected, and we've got like 20 libertarians in office right now. Not all of them are elected, of course. A lot of them were, appointed or other kind of office, but 12 got elected.
We've had several libertarian candidates come on here a couple of weeks ago. They were really eager to talk, and that was encouraging.
Well, we're winning. So the fact is, we're told that libertarians can't win, even though libertarians always have won. Not every race, obviously, and not for any big offices. We've won a few state legislature offices, though, and it's really frustrating that people are even thinking in terms of odds and money when they know that that's not how we should be voting. And people talk about how bad the influence of money in politics is, and yet you say, oh well, and you don't have enough money to be viable, and whatever the heck that's supposed to mean, and why that should affect your vote.
There's also quite a movement, bad or good, I don't know, but there is a huge movement of, is voting when you've got essentially two parties that are going to get on the list, or that you have been pre-selected for you, is it actually giving authority to something that you don't agree with? There's a lot of people down the sovereign rabbit hole, which may be causing the problem in the no vote situation. Like I can imagine libertarians get more affected by those people than most voters, because that sense of, well, I'm not giving any government any authority, they don't deserve it. And I see why, but
I hate that argument. I mean, I hear it.
I know.
I'm not disagreeing. It's just like he's saying, well, I'm not going to use this fire extinguisher on the fire because I don't want to give authority to the fire. No, that's not.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. Some of the other work I do volunteer is election transparency work with two different organizations, and so I've gotten to know a lot about boring voting machine technology. But
well, I think there's a people out there that have that attitude, and I can respect it and I can understand it at the same time. Like I can understand it, but I think that would be a major problem for the third party vote, is that the typical people that would be voting for that, a lot of them are opting for that solution, and maybe they're the ones that need to be convinced of you guys.
People say, well, elections, there's always been so much fraud, and that in 2004 my election team, I was running as a Republican then, and my election team actually documented, did a retrospective analysis of previous elections going back, 20 years. And we documented a lot of fraud. People go to jail for fraud every election cycle. So I understand why some people say, well, if there's fraud, why even bother? And a lot of people have heard of like LBJ's Box 13 scandal where, in one small, he was running for Texas Senate race. 203 people voted in alphabetical order and signed the poll book with the same signature. That kind of stuff has always happened.
But that's another very partisan issue now, because, and I've watched it myself, most of these two Democrat-run organizations that I work with, I mean, they're founded by Democrats. They got their start back in 2000, one of them. But now I've seen since the Stop the Steal stuff, that you've got the Democrats say there's absolutely nothing wrong with our elections. It's all just fine. And if you even bring it up, then they think, oh, you're on that side. So, but to your point about the non-voters, that is absolutely true, because there were some studies done where they polled people, that don't vote, and their answers of why they don't vote is, I don't think it matters. It doesn't affect, but it's just kind of this apathy. And I think those are the people that candidates like you guys can actually reach and inspire, because you're not just, spewing talking points. And so, yeah, I think you're right. That's really, I don't like that argument either, although I understand it about not voting. I think we have to,
But a lot of those people who are not voting are also not doing their homework, and they're also not, they're not looking for any candidates. And so if they're, the biggest problem that people like Michael and I would have is that nobody is looking for us. And that,
well, I was looking for you.
Well, thank you. So, there's one. No, but the point is, they hear about Democrats and Republicans every day,
and they're sick of it.
They see it everywhere. It makes them numb. And then, and in most states, alternative parties, independents are not allowed in primary elections, and a lot of voters decide their vote for the general election during the primary election cycle. So whoever wins the primary, that's my guy, and that's my party, that's my tribe. And that's frustrating, because they get sick of elections before the real election even begins. And a lot of times, especially with early voting now, they often don't have debates until early voting has already begun. So people don't ever get to hear that there are alternatives before they've actually already voted.
Well, I'm disappointed my Democrat dropped off, but that's okay. But I just think, you guys do have this advantage, because those people they're great candidates, but they don't win their primary, it's over. You guys have months to go to hopefully, talk to people and make more people know who you are. And I think we have to rely on independent media. Hopefully you guys, Michael, are you circulating the circuit?
Not yet.
I know Jose does some.
Yeah, no, Jose does. No, I haven't as much. I'm focusing local.
Good.
And, my limited resources, being a one-man wrecking machine with, a few deputy campaign managers and people. I have a big kickoff party here in 2 weeks. That's going to be a really big event. It's going to be, in front of a bar in a local, in a busy bar district downtown. I'm going to have guest speakers. I'm going to have community tables set up. I'm going to have a live DJ and some speeches and my food truck there. So it's going to be a big old thing.
Cool.
and it's
You
gonna
should. I hope you can have like just some Assange sign or something somewhere.
Maybe I could. I'm thinking of doing like when they do like like when a boxer or a fighter does like a walkout to their fight. When I walk up to the stage, because I'm a food truck owner, I was thinking of coming out of the food truck with a couple of like signs or something. Maybe one of them could be a free Julian Assange or something like that. I have a couple other things,
If you need one, I'm sure I can find someone to send you some stuff. Wait, I know what I need to do. I'll be in touch. When did you say you're doing this?
May 24th.
May 24th. If you want some materials,
please do. Yeah, I'm considering. I'm thinking about it right now. But something quick and easy, like a few things. I think I might. I think it might be good for the theatrics of the.
Okay, I'm going to write down May 24th and see if I can get you something.
Well, please,
just like
if you send something
signs
in the mail, if you sent something in the mail, maybe that would work, and I could hold it. And before I go take the stage, I'm going to say a few things.
Okay. There's also a postcard campaign that Paula
Halo Benson. Halo Benson.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe we could get something like that to you. I mean, of course, we hope every week that they're going to give up and drop the charges, if we're not going to be May 24th needing to do this, but most likely we will be. So, of course, there's the next hearing. I guess we should end maybe on that. So on May 20th, I guess this is when they're going to consider the U.S. assurances that you might be better at regurgitating that for me, Alex. I know that it was about the First Amendment and the death penalty.
Yeah, it was the death penalty and the First Amendment. And on the First Amendment, they basically said that Julian is allowed to request it, but basically skirting around the issue completely. So, and the historical precedent is that they don't give any First Amendment rights to a foreign national.
Didn't Alan what's his name, Kronberg, the attorney, in another hearing, didn't he even argue that he didn't have First Amendment rights?
Yeah, precisely, because of the separation of powers. Even if they gave assurances, it can't be trusted for many reasons, but also not least that the separation of powers means that once it gets to Virginia, that's a different ball game anyway. So as we know, and as I understand it, I might correct me if I'm wrong, please, but as I understand it, if Britain accepts these assurances, then the extradition is done, a done deal. But I believe that Julian then still gets a chance to challenge those on Article 10 at the European Court of Human Rights. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So that, I mean, my concern is that Julian is already really sick and, needs to be out of jail now, drop the charges now. This is just insane. And any of this stuff that's going to kick the ball down the road further is a worry. I'm almost like, I wish it would just get to European Court, because we already know Britain has got absolutely no hope. British justice is really gone.
I'm showing this because this is this replica of his cell. You know about this Belmarsh line, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is an artist that recreated this, and this is what he's in. Is it 23 and a half hours a day?
Yep, 23 and a half hours. And we were even told that even when he goes to exercise, the corridors are cleared. He is very rarely seeing anyone.
And this is for publishing documents.
And really the goal has always been the chilling effect on journalism that has really decapacitated the alt media that we do have, and any mainstream people with any morals whatsoever. It has scared journalists from reporting the truth. And in my opinion, I think Julian wasn't silenced because of his comments about Catalonia, or how he treated the Ecuadorian embassy, or anything like that, embarrassing Spain. I don't think it was anything to do with that. I think it was to do with this chilling effect that they wanted to have on journalism. It was about silencing Julian during the rollout of the beta testing for the tyranny, which was COVID. And I think if you listen to Julian's last words, I would encourage everyone to go and watch his very last video appearance at a Barcelona conference. He's talking about the Internet of Things. He's talking, he's pre-cognizant of stuff that did come about during the COVID or became more clear during that time. He blew the whistle on nanotech, on smart dust, on geoengineering, all in his last 5 minutes of that. And that was the very last time we ever saw him. About a month or two later, he was cut off from the internet. And we certainly never saw a video of him again. I think we heard Yanis Varoufakis have a phone call with him, and we've heard a couple of phone calls with Stella and John. Other than that, we've not heard from him.
In the Ithaca movie, there's a little bit.
You can hear a bit there, a little bit when they released the fact that Stella had been around, when Stella was introduced to the world, and and then that one phone call at Christmas with Yanis Varoufakis. And apart from that, I don't think we've heard at all. And Julian's internet was cut off in 2018 from memory.
It wasn't that was for a year. Wasn't it like a whole year before they came and got him?
Yeah, it was.
Right?
It was close to a year. Yeah, something like 9 months, maybe. Yeah. And so, I mean, really, that's the feeling that I have as to why he's been cut off, because his voice was so powerful, and then it crossed these boundaries of left, right, libertarian, anarchist, hacker. He was really the darling of many, many people, anti-war, you name it. And like I say, they skelfed off that support over the years, but I think it's now coming back. Clearly. And I mean, we often have events around the world in solidarity. I mean, the most we've had probably is about 80 when Free Assange Wave got involved. But Candles for Assange did a 62 city birthday, and since then we've had many months where we've had 100 events or more. So certainly there's a lot of worldwide support. In New Zealand, I should also mention, we're trying to go for a haka for Assange. Do you know what a haka is?
What hacker?
Haka? Yeah, it's the Maori war dance that they do at the beginning of the All Blacks, the rugby. What we're hoping to do is put a call out to any Kiwis, any iwi out there, Maori Kiwis who support Assange, who could help us get together a haka for Assange, maybe by his birthday, maybe sooner if it's possible. And that's being organised by some New Zealand, London protesters. Matt Brennan, who's amazing, Brennan. Yeah, you always see him in the orange suit. You should interview him.
He came on, or he
did
talked to me that night. I didn't know he was in the courtroom, but remotely. He got remote access. So he came on and was really nice to talk to me. It was like 2:00 in the morning his time. So I got some great information from him about really what was going on in there, and he drew sketches too.
Wonderful.
Another crazy thing that we don't have access to anything that's going on inside this courtroom. It's so hidden. So I really hope that, Michael, I know, especially with you being, reaching younger people, when I've seen all the student protesters out there protesting this bombing of Gaza, that I would love to see more of that crowd start to learn more about Assange. And one of the things that Randy Credico has done, he's had this billboard truck out all around DC and in New York, and now, it's been a digital billboard truck. Have you seen it recently, at least on Twitter? And he has like Assange stuff, and then he's got things for Gaza, and so it's kind of, I think if people could sort of understand that these things are related, and that would be great. And also just understand it's about our right to know the truth about what our government is doing.
Yeah, the censorship around Julian Assange, and then the censorship on TikTok and social media and the media in general, just about what's coming out of the war. So that's a direct line.
Exactly.
And that's what unifies it all. I mean, I think the censorship, the fighting against the censorship and getting the truth out there so that we can prosecute these war criminals and free the people that need to be freed. I think that is key, and that could bring people, could heal the divide that we've had. I really do believe.
Well,
Sure.
I'm just always thrilled to find you guys. I would, hope there more candidates run. I don't know. I mean, it's a long battle, but I'm just really glad when I find people like you with integrity and the guts to run for office. It's not an easy thing, I'm sure. So, okay, we're going to go out with I've got this clip of Alex on the violin. It's one of your really short ones. But you got to see the end of this, what happens. I love this. It's only 41 seconds, but it's great. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank
It was
you.
great to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
here's
Thank you.
the
Nice to meet you.
They were chasing him yesterday, and he had to throw himself away. He had to take extreme caution because they were very strong.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I had the wrong
Wonderful.
version. I had the wrong version. The
I loved
longer
it.
version is. Oh, I'm sorry.
Anything to make a spectacle outside the British High Commission.
How do you play the violin with it? How do you do that? Wow.
Well, you have to do short bows, which is why it sounds a bit funny. But other than that,
I'm gonna have to describe the end. Or you? I can't believe I pulled up the wrong clip. Anyway,
Which bit were you trying to get?
I think I just had two labels. I don't know why I had a shorter version, but the longer version is where the cop comes up.
Yeah, he comes in the last 30 seconds or so. Yeah, last minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Have you got the same clip? It's just at the very end.
Right. I don't know how I managed to do that. Anyway,
Yeah.
but it's good because she just keeps playing the violin and goes up to the cop and is still like kind of in his face.
Well, because he was asking a person that was just one of the protesters that came along, and I was the organizer, and he was asking all sorts of questions of this poor guy who didn't know, and so I was like, we'll talk to you when we're finished playing. So I just played really loudly in his face. Yeah.
I'm sorry I messed up the setup. Thank you for explaining the rest of it. I've recently been cleaning out my files and I must have transferred the wrong version. But anyway, I'll post it on Twitter. How about that?
Oh, it's my Facebook profile picture, on my Facebook, Alex Greenweaver.
Do you have
people can.
You have that whole video though, where you?
Oh, the whole video, yeah, it's on my channel, Alex Hills. On YouTube.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, it's one of the popular ones, but it's maybe I don't know, 30 down the list, probably in the popular ones.
Now I think I have it here on my computer. It's just when I was loading things up here, I must have just last minute I clicked the wrong one. But anyway, thank you guys so much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Have a good evening.
Bye.